Earlier today, I was talking about the bloodbath at Disney and all the layoffs that were starting this week, and it turns out they're affecting one longtime executive associated with Marvel. That would be Ike Perlmutter. Apparently, he has been shown the door. People might know that he was the owner of Marvel Comics after a weird, very, very weird acquisition of the company. I believe he ran a toy company in the Florida region, somehow acquired Marvel Comics, then sold the Marvel brand to Disney itself, and had remained in place as an executive for the company for a very long time. As part of the acquisition, I believe he became a very large shareholder of Disney itself. And I thought part of the acquisition meant that he got to keep a job essentially for life. Apparently that was not true, because the New York Times is reporting Ike Perlmutter, the famously frugal Marvel Entertainment chairman, has been laid off as part of a cost-cutting campaign. Disney confirmed the move. Perlmutter was told by phone on Wednesday that Marvel Entertainment, a small division centered on consumer products, including Marvel Comics, and run separately from Marvel Studios, was redundant and would be folded into larger Disney business units, according to two Disney executives briefed on the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive personal matter. Not exactly the nicest way to let somebody go over the phone. Obviously, there are a lot of phone calls being made right now within the greater Disney company itself, as the layoffs and firings are hot and heavy this day, and we know that they're not over with. How much they will actually affect Marvel Comics, we're not really sure, although there is some information in this article, which I'll get to here in a moment, which leads me to believe that at least in the short term, Marvel Comics should endeavor and survive, and will now do so without the obstructionist Ike Perlmutter. Now, he has had certainly some big successes. I mean, selling Marvel for billions of dollars to Disney, obviously lined his pocketbook off of the hard work, blood, sweat, and tears of a lot of creative people that he really didn't have a whole lot to do with. Certainly, he had some oversight for a period of time. And obviously there after a while, he was in charge of the Disney television stuff after he and Kevin Feige had their run-in, which Ike Perlmutter absolutely lost big time and lost any influence over movies. He did famously decide that Marvel Comics would no longer really do anything with X-Men anymore, which was really, really stupid, because Marvel Comics only has so many brand name entities that you could consider A-tier properties, Spider-Man obviously being the biggest one, X-Men being number 2, and then number 3 being Wolverine himself, before you start getting to things like the Avengers and Captain America and Hulk and some of those types of characters. So he basically knocked out 2 of the 3 best sellers just over a personal grievance with Fox that really had nothing to do with Marvel Comics. Obviously, those deals have been signed long before then, and I believe even his acquisition of Marvel itself. Mr. Perlmutter has been a distraction inside Disney for more than a decade. Most recently, when he pushed for investor Nelson Peltz to join the Disney board. Mr. Perlmutter contacted Disney board members and senior Disney executives 6 times from last August to November to push for Mr. Peltz to join the board, according to a securities filing. Mr. Peltz withdrew in February when Robert Iger, Disney chief executive, unveiled a restructuring and cost cuts, along with the likely restoration of Disney's dividend. And that pretty much all but sealed Ike Perlmutter's fate within Disney as a company, because we have seen that Mr. Iger, since returning as the CEO of Disney, is very much influenced by Game of Thrones, and anyone that could be seen as a competitor or not supporting his throne, I guess, basically has to get axed out. He removed several board members. Just this week, he wiped out an entire division that was associated with Bob Chapek, and now he has wiped out some more competition. Ike Perlmutter, who was pushing for a Disney board member that maybe wasn't going to go along with all of Bob Iger's plans for the future. But once he got that dividend promise, because dwindling stock prices and billions upon billions of dollars lost in the process, be damned. If the investors don't get their dividend, Daddy's not happy. Apparently that's what happened. And once he withdrew his request to be a part of the board, he pretty much left his biggest ally on the board itself very vulnerable. And now we see a very spiteful Bob Iger firing Ike Perlmutter. Not that he didn't deserve it. It's not like Ike Perlmutter has been a big voice at Marvel or within Disney for a long time. He certainly has been cashing the paychecks, but if it wasn't for Ike Perlmutter, Disney wouldn't really own the Marvel brand, and then within that, they wouldn't have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the most financially profitable franchise in movie history. So you could say they kind of owe something to Ike Perlmutter, probably something more than just a phone call. And yes, he has been an obstructionist. He has been a distraction in the past, but he hasn't really been doing much lately. As far as Marvel Comics go, Dan Buckley, president of Marvel Entertainment, which operates Marvel Comics, will remain and report to Kevin Feige. Perlmutter sold Marvel to Disney in 2009 for $4 billion. After gaining control of the superhero company in the late 1990s, Perlmutter's involvement with Marvel as a whole has greatly diminished over the years. He has not been involved with Marvel movies since 2015, when a feud with Kevin Feige over costs related to the Doctor Strange film boiled over. Mr. Perlmutter wanted Feige fired. Bob Iger overruled him. Ike Perlmutter also lost oversight of Marvel television shows beginning in 2019, basically when they decided to incorporate all Marvel television into Disney Plus, or when they started doing that. That was really the beginning of the end of any creative control that he had. But what is interesting to note about this is Ike Perlmutter has done something that Kevin Feige has never done, and that's produced a good Marvel-related television show. He had the entire Marvel universe there at Netflix, which is absolutely awesome. The first 2 seasons of Daredevil, the 1 season of Punisher, and I would say the 1 season of Luke Cage, all produced under the watchful eye of Ike Perlmutter, are better than anything produced on Disney Plus under the watchful eye of Kevin Feige. So he probably could have learned something from Ike Perlmutter about television, because my goodness, Kevin Feige hasn't figured that out yet. And if you ever have a chance, do read up on Ike Perlmutter's acquisition of Marvel in the 90s. It's one of the strangest stories you'll ever read. And I don't know, it was some really shady stuff. He probably should have never gotten a hold of the company. It probably should be owned by Jim Shooter and his group of people that he put together to actually purchase Marvel in the 90s. And I think if that would have happened, maybe we wouldn't have the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't know that Shooter would have sold out to Disney, obviously like Ike Perlmutter did. But we probably would have had 2 or 3 more great ages of Marvel Comics instead of just having the Joe Quesada first 5 or 6 years, when you can go, man, Marvel Comics are really, really good, because Jim Shooter is the most creative and successful editor-in-chief in Marvel Comics history. If you look at the time when he was in charge, Marvel Comics creative was at its apex. You're talking about 5 of the greatest comic book runs of all times, all happening simultaneously. People don't even talk about that Captain America run, even though it might be the best Cap run of all times, all happening under Shooter. That was yanked out from underneath him because of a judge and Ike Perlmutter. And you got to read the story. Too insane to actually believe to be true, but apparently it actually happened. Today is a big changing of the guard, but Dan Buckley is still in charge of Marvel Entertainment, which is being folded into Disney proper, likely under Marvel Studios, I imagine, since he's still going to be reporting to Kevin Feige himself. What does this mean for Marvel Comics moving forward in the future? Well, at least in the short term, it sounds like, because Dan Buckley is still there and he started in comics, that Marvel Comics will remain and probably be doing what they've been doing. But we do know this is not the only round of layoffs coming. There are going to be layoffs coming throughout the summer as Bob Iger is trying to cut $5 billion worth of cost over the next several years. Would cutting Marvel Comics out of the equation be a big money saver for Bob Iger and Disney? Not really when you look at the big picture. But also, if you think about it this way, if they just removed Marvel Comics completely, what kind of revenue would be lost in the process as well? It's not like Marvel's a big revenue generator either. So it could be very interesting for the future of Marvel Comics and its employees. We do know in the past, Disney did do their own comic books. I believe Neon from Clownfish TV was actually an artist for Disney for several years doing some of their comic book works in the past, but they ended up just kind of contracting all that stuff out, licensing it out to other people to create. And Disney didn't see the need to have those characters, at least in comic books, underneath their umbrella. And those are the characters that they love. Those are the characters that have been there from the very beginning. If that's how they felt about Mickey Mouse and the Rescue Rangers and all those kind of characters, are they going to continue on with Marvel Comics? And based on the output, if you just want to look at Marvel Comics as an IP farm for future movies and TV shows, there just isn't anything there, and there really hasn't been anything there produced probably in 8 years that's really of quality enough to put on the big screen or even into streaming. If you want to look at Immortal Hulk maybe, but I don't know if they can do a movie with that. And then, the Venom stuff was really cool, but they certainly can't do a movie with that or even a TV show. So I don't know. It should be very interesting stuff. And I would not be surprised within the next calendar year or two if Marvel Comics continue on as a brand, but add another publisher and no longer under Disney, because that's generally speaking how they've done business in the past. Very interesting stuff. Not only did I talk about earlier today about all the layoffs and firings and the bloodbath going on at Disney right now, Earlier this week, I talked about how it's really screwed up. You can see things are moving at a breakneck speed as Bob Iger is trying to do everything in his power to fix multiple divisions at the same time, including the MCU and Star Wars. If you haven't seen just how bad Disney is screwed right now, you need to see this video. There's also a link in the video description.